Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is directed by André Øvredal and it's produced by Guillermo del Toro. And it's based on the anthology books. There's three of them. I actually remember buying them as a kid at the school book fair, which I have no idea why they're sold there. Because the stories themselves were really creepy, but what was the creepiest part about them was the imagery that they had in them, the artwork that they had in them, and even rereading them before this movie came out. I reread all three of them, and it just gave me such nostalgia. And just looking at the artwork, it was just so disturbing. And this movie really gives a storyline that it's not just like an anthology of different stories. There's one storyline that threads throughout the entire movie, and it's able to involve a few of different stories from these books. And I thought that was a pretty well done storyline. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind it if they would have done just an anthology of different stories from the books. But some of these stories are pretty short, so I can understand that they didn't really want to go that route. So they went with this story of these kids finding a book in a haunted house, and the book starts to write itself, and it puts each of the kids that found the book in these different stories. And these stories are from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. And they start to come to life. So it's sort of like the Goosebumps movie that came out a few years ago. It is a little more adult than that movie. Well, there's two of them now, the two Goosebumps movies now, but it's a little more adult than those movies, but at the same time, it's still PG-13. And I feel like they did a good job at pushing the PG-13 rating as far as they could. I feel like they excelled more in the creepiness of the movie. A lot of times they would rely on jump scares. I feel like those areas weren't the strongest. But whenever it came to just creepiness and creepy imagery and bringing these artworks to life, I felt like they did a really fantastic job. The group of kids that we follow around throughout this entire movie, I felt like they were enjoyable enough to watch. A lot of them were pretty comedic, not like super comedic to where it overrode the tone of the movie, but at the same time, it was still enjoyable enough to watch them. I didn't feel like they were weak characters, and while there's a lot of setup in the beginning, these characters' personalities really help to not weigh the movie down too much while they set up a lot of these elements of the story. It was kind of disappointing that all the stories that they had in this movie, pretty literally all of them, except for maybe one that was at the very end, they showed them in the trailers, so it kind of took away from the excitement of seeing, oh, which story are they going to have next. As for negatives, I feel like a lot of the characters in this movie, well, pretty much all of them, their backstories are a little underexplored. They give some backstories to a few of the characters. I mean, it's enough to make them feel like they aren't bad characters, but I feel like they didn't give them enough for me to feel invested in them. And it really starts to become obvious once you get towards the end, and there's some emotional things that happen, especially with the main girl and her dad, played by Dean Norris from Breaking Bad. And I really start to feel that I'm not really caring as much as I probably should, especially with how much time they spend on setting up this story, which that's kind of another negative that I have. There's a lot of build up to the actual plot, and there's a lot of stuff that they have, and you feel like they should have included more backstory, which I'm not saying they don't, but I feel like with how much time they spent before the actual story starts happening, you feel like there should have been more that made you care more once it gets towards the climax of the movie. The ending kind of felt sort of disappointing to me. The story that they actually used for the ending was actually a pretty perfect story, I think, for them to have used, but I feel like it didn't have as much weight as they felt like it had. And then for some reason, they kept most of the visuals from the drawings in the book, but they didn't keep the visual for that particular story at the end. And it's one of the pictures that I remember the most from a kid, and it's probably one of the scariest images in the book, but they decided to go a different route with the design of the character in that story, which that's not even my biggest complaint about the ending, but it did kind of disappoint me also. Just a little side disappointment. So overall, I think this movie was a pretty good horror movie. It was a pretty solid one. I feel like there was some areas that they didn't really pull off well. They gave backstories to characters, but I feel like they didn't do enough with them for me to fully care about what these characters are going through at the end of the movie. I am kind of excited that they left it open for a sequel. Because there are so many other stories that they could put into future movies. I'm excited to see if they go through with more movies. It did pretty well with creepiness. It did pretty well with translating a lot of the artwork onto the screen. Just overall, I think it was just a solid enough movie for me to be able to recommend it to other people, especially if you read the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books as a kid. You're definitely going to enjoy this movie. And even if you didn't, I feel like you're still going to be able to enjoy it and maybe even interest you into reading those books. I'm going to say that I'm going to say that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is 75% awesome. And I just realized that I forgot to turn on the lights for this video. I had stayed up most of last night rereading these books. So I passed out before filming this, so I was pretty out of it at the beginning of this. Alright guys, if you've seen Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, go to comment below and let me know what you thought of the movie. And maybe even comment what your favorite stories from the books were. And if you're interested, we have a podcast called the Awesome Padron Podcast, where we talk about different movie news and different movie trailers that come out. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2awesomemen. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.